Welcome, everyone. I am Rachel Hughes, Community Manager here at Alloy Women's Health. We are a digital health platform bringing science-backed, evidence-based menopause hormonal solutions direct to your door. Before I introduce our terrific guests today, I want to let you know that you may enjoy $20 off any purchase on myalloy.com using the code WEB2024. And I also want to let viewers know that I will turn to your questions and comments throughout this conversation, so I invite you to drop them into the Q&A today. Today, we are speaking with Marissa Nelson. She is an award-winning family and sex therapist who has been helping couples and singles for the past decade. She's also a champion for equality, reproductive, and social justice, particularly for communities of color, where there continues to be challenges such as implicit bias in healthcare, treatment disparities, and barriers of access to reproductive care. Marissa is a TEDx speaker and has been featured in hundreds of media spots from the New York Times, CNN, Huffington Post, Wall Street Journal. In addition, Marissa is a clinical member of the American Association of Marriage and Family Therapists, American Association of Sexuality Educators, Counselors, and Therapists, the American Society for Reproductive Medicine, the Association of Black Sexologists and Clinicians, and holds a certificate in divorce mediation and conflict resolution. Marissa lives with her family in Washington, D.C. Welcome, Marissa. I'm so happy to speak with you. I was off camera reminding Marissa about when we met at a Swell event over a year ago, and she was so fantastic. And Alloy's co-founder, Ann Fullenwider, and I were together, and we both sort of gasped at each other as we were listening to Marissa. And so we've been hoping to speak with her since then. So thank you so much for being here. So today we're going to dive into the complexities of navigating relationships during perimenopause and menopause. We're going to discuss practical tips to strengthen communication, maintain intimacy, and keep emotional connections alive. And I'd love to start, Marissa, with just sort of general relationship challenges that may come up in perimenopause and menopause. So I'm curious about some common relationship challenges that you have seen in your clients, in your patients for during menopause and perimenopause. Can you speak to that?
Absolutely. And thank you so much for having me. And hello, a warm welcome to everybody that has made time out of their busy schedule to be here and learn more and invest in yourself and invest in your own sexual wellness and your relationship and connection, because that's what it's all about. I will tell you a little bit about who I work with and what are some of the issues that I see. So I'm still in private practice in Washington, D.C. And outside of being in private practice, I do quite a bit of articles. I do a lot of speaking engagements, and I talk to a lot of women around the world. So my clients are in the U.S. I have clients abroad. And so I have an understanding. I've heard a lot of stories about what women are working through right now. Most of my clients are also 35, in their 30s to their 70s, with, of course, on both sides, outliers on both sides. So I do work with women in their 20s and women well beyond their 70s. And at the end of the day, there are a couple of things that we all have in common that we're working through, particularly when it comes to menopause. One, I think structurally, I am an attachment-based therapist. So I always look at family and family systems and how did we learn relationships? How did we learn how to be in relationships? And this matters because when we are young, we turn to our parents for survival. This is where we learn the building blocks of pleasure, of trust, of connection, of how to be in connection in relationships. When we don't get what we need, as much as we love our parents and as hard as they have tried to give us what they need. I know I grew up in a single parent household. A lot of us are children of divorce or separation or family trauma. It has an impact on us, and it has an impact on the partners that we choose, the relationships, and the way that we communicate, the way that we resolve conflict or lack thereof. So for me, structurally, I'm also looking at how did you grow up, and what are those threads, pieces, and themes that you have been through your life that have impacted the way that you show up. Menopause does not, or perimenopause does not happen in a vacuum. It happens and is at the epicenter of all of these different aspects of who you are. And so that's one piece that we'll get back to. Another piece of it is conflict resolution, right? A penny for every time I heard, we just need to communicate together, like what brings you in? Like, why are you here? And how can I support you? We want to communicate better. We are always communicating. So it's not necessarily that, let's tweak it. It's not that we want to communicate. We want more communication. We want more efficient communication. We want communication that is more connecting, communication that when I speak to you and when we are in relationship together, we're working through and teasing apart some problems, whether it's my own desire, whether it's, co-creating a relationship, a life, a chapter that I'm going through in my life and bringing you into my intimacy, bringing you on board. I want that to be received in safety, in comfort, in joy, in curiosity, in vulnerability, in really being able to be there for me and be that safe haven that I can come to. I would say one of the things also, we are women that are very busy. So let's look at calendars and time. Time is a construct, but we're all working towards what's on our calendar, what's next, what's that Zoom call that's coming next. My kids have to have a 7-year-old. So it's like ballet is on this day, practice for this is on that day. So we're working with condensed time that it feels like our life is so busy with obligation. That obligation takes us away from our present, our present moment, our bodies, and even away from pleasure that we want. And so how do we negotiate time and the things that we want to do, the obligations, and also the heartfelt work of raising children if you have them, or finding love, or just creating space in your life to be able to give back to yourself. And then underneath that, I think another aspect of it, I would say one of the last aspects is your own energy. We deal with chronic fatigue. We deal with how, perimenopause will affect everything from hormones to the way that we feel, to brain fog, to sexual dysfunction, vaginal dryness, you name it. It affects the way that we feel physically and the amount of energy and kind of battery that we have to be able to give back to others and also give back to ourselves. So for me, those are some of the big tent issues that I see along with in that umbrella, or if you are partnered, or if you are, if you have a lover, or if you are in connection with somebody else, also negotiating desire. That is one of the biggest reasons that I see clients as a sex therapist, because people are wanting to understand, well, what do I want sexually? My body has changed. Maybe you're recovering from cancer or another health diagnosis. Maybe you've had a myomectomy, or there are other factors that are affecting sexual functioning during menopause or perimenopause. And so really being able to communicate that effectively of like, I don't even know what I want sometimes, and then bringing your partner into that, those are some of the biggest issues that I see. I hope that makes sense.
It makes so much sense. It's fascinating. It's so helpful, and it's given me so much more to think about I feel like throwing all my questions away. I'm curious, Marissa, about, before we sort of dig in deeper to some of these silos that you highlighted, what is a common mistake that you see between couples during this season of life? You talked about communication, sort of maybe not knowing how to express needs. Totally fair, and we're going to get into that as well. But is there anything else that sort of speaks loudly to you?
Yes, assumptions.
Assumptions.
Assumptions. part of the breakdown in communication with couples, and aside from couples, I'm talking about in all relationships, but we're going to focus on couples since that is the bulk of my work, is that we operate, act, and react based on assumptions. Where do those assumptions come from? Our core beliefs, how we feel, our dynamic with our partners. And so when it comes to intimacy, for example, one of the biggest mistakes that we make is that we make assumptions about our partner's motivations, our partner's wants, our partner's needs, and then we operate based on those assumptions. And then we make assumptions and we say, you know what? They don't want to have sex. They don't want to be intimate. Then I'm going to make the assumption that you don't want intimacy. You've shut down sexually. Or I might make the assumption that they don't want me and I'm being rejected and I'm not attractive anymore. And maybe my partner doesn't like my body anymore. Or maybe my partner isn't feeling me like that anymore. And based on that, we will
A
put
whole
up
life can be spun out of
the
it.
whole thing that can be spun out of that, as opposed to not taking it as personally and taking yourself out of the equation and really approaching this period of time with every problem, but particularly when it comes to this, with a sense of kindness, with a sense of curiosity. Curiosity is going to be my big word because we don't know the answers to a lot of these things. There are a lot of reasons why people are experiencing the feelings that they are experiencing. Trauma is a big T trauma, little t trauma, health issues. You can be low on iron and it can have a whole lot of issues, and you can be perimenopausal. Like there's a constellation of factors, but what we always have to come back to is, how do I not make assumptions about who you are, what your motivations are, and let that stand in the way of our communication? How might I be able to ask better questions and really lead with the empathy and the connection that is necessary? Listen, as a partner, I may not understand what's happening, but I want you to help me understand what's going on with your body. I want you to help me understand what your boundaries are. I want you to help me understand what pleasure is going to look like for you right now. And if pleasure is not intercourse, that's okay. But like, what do you need from me right now? What do you need from the relationship right now? Because if we don't do these things, we're going to enter cycles of defensiveness and rejection. Because when somebody's coming at you, it is human nature to be like, I don't want any of that. We're not going to talk about any of that. So not only are we not going to talk about it, will you try to bring it up? I'm probably going to avoid it, or I'm going to be defensive about it. And if I'm avoiding about it and I'm defensive about it, I'm definitely going to be feeling like I'm rejecting you, or I'm rejecting and withholding from myself because I just don't want the ick. And that's where I think things break down and how we can do this time differently.
So Marissa, the umbrella, well, there's a lot of umbrellas. I guess there's the umbrella of communication. I'm thinking in terms of a foundation for a healthy relationship. And you've amplified so many pieces that sort of make that umbrella more useful to us, sort of understanding our family of origin, understanding how we were raised, what we understood to be true, making assumptions, being curious, trauma, all of health, all of these different pieces in sort of broad strokes, which I know is hard maybe to do. What are a few strategies for improving communication in a relationship before we get into sort of like the sexual piece particularly?
Yeah, sure. Deep and wide, big, but I think as far as communication is concerned, I know people have heard you're not listening to wait for a response, that you are really listening and holding space for one another. I think the thing that people get wrong is in communication is that a big part of it, yes, is listening, but not listening just for the sake of listening. You're listening to hold space for each other. Sometimes we don't want to say the things that are uncomfortable because I don't want to be criticized, I don't want to be hurt, and I don't want you to attack me. And so I withhold my truth, or I withhold telling you or giving you access to my internal world. So number one, a big aspect of communication is being able to learn how to hold space for each other. Holding space means I may not, and I will not agree with everything that you say. And the point is not agreement, because I think too often people think that communication is about
That's
compliance.
so helpful. I've never heard that
People think communication is
before.
about compliance. I'm listening because I want you to agree with me. And if you agree with me, then you are compliant and you make me feel happy because now I know we're on the same page. That's not what communication is. Communication at essence, especially between couples, is about how can I better understand who you are, what you need, and how I can support. I think that's the easiest way that I can say it. Not how can I support you? What do you need? What do you need me to understand about what you're going through, about what you need, about your perspective, about that argument that we had, about the way that you see things? I think that if we learn how to hold space like that, number two, we don't attack, we do not criticize, we do not bring in the kitchen sink. Oh, you never do this. You don't love me. You don't care about me. If you cared about me, you would do this, 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 and that. This is how we start to erode the foundation of a relationship. Now, I'm going to say this, and this is important for me to say. Many times we do these things because we've learned that in order to get a need met, this is how we ask for it. We ask for what we need in relationships, sometimes by criticism. We ask for what we need in relationship by sometimes attacking, because that's what we learn, because that's what happened to us when we asked for what we needed. I want you to be able to, sometimes part of communication is sitting on our hands and really being able to it is uncomfortable to hear that I triggered you that way. It's uncomfortable. And please don't think that I don't practice what I preach. I don't do this work and not practice this myself. It is a hard thing for a partner to say, I love you, but you didn't show up for me here. I love you, but this upset me. This is where you're going to have to take a breath. You feel that, you feel it, but it is not about you defending yourself. It's the vulnerability that's underneath the surface, because even when you're criticizing, even in communication, when you find yourself mad, frustrated, angry, it's all the stuff that's underneath it. It's triggering my sense of abandonment because people have left me. It's triggering, my sadness, my grief. Like, I want to know that, I can depend on you and I can count on you. It is all of the feelings that are underneath the surface. So if we talk about anything that we're going through that vulnerable lens, most often people are gonna be like, oh, damn, I didn't even realize that I hurt you that way. And I'm really sorry about that. Or I really didn't get that perspective, because at the end of the day, we don't use communication for compliance. We use communication with compassion and to learn and to understand and to connect.
Amazing. I'm thinking of all of the women in midlife, in perimenopause, menopause that I know who've had, myself included, who've had years of a variety of struggles in a relationship with a specific person. And your hormones are doing this. Your irritability, your patience is lower. Yes, all of this is happening. And the person closest to you may or may not be aware. You said something really important that I want to ask you about. What's a question that you can ask of a partner, or a partner listening to this who is not going through these hormonal fluctuations might ask of each other regularly in order to kind of maintain open communication?
Two things come up for me when you say that. Hormones, regardless of where you are. I have a lot of clients, for example, that are going through egg retrievals, or they are taking medication that affects their mood. Perimenopause, menopause will do that for you off the bat. But then there's factors that might elevate that, right? And when that happens, many times we don't even have the awareness of it, but our partner feels the impact of that, right? And so I would say, number one, how are we being attuned with our own bodies before we ask a partner to do something? or say something? How are we being attuned to our own self, our own emotions? Are we so busy doing for others and trying to scrape through, like get through the next thing, that we don't notice when we are depleted? And not just the hormones, but depleted energy-wise, if we're not eating, if we are not sleeping, all of these different factors that are affecting the way in which we're just showing up to our partnership, to our relationships. So there's the self-awareness that has to be there first. The second thing is, who am I and how do I react or respond when I am not my best self? Because we're all going to have those days. Our partners are going to have those days. We're going to have those days. And so it's important for us to also recognize, who am I when I am not my best self? What does that feel like? What does that look like to me, to my partner? And then as a partner, it is not about criticism, shame, or blame, although the energy that they receive, they might feel like, I don't even understand what I did wrong, or I don't even know what happened, and the not wanting to feel like they're walking on eggshells too. And so I think that it's a place where both people are working together to say, hey, let me check in with you today. I just want to let you know that right now I'm on this hormonal panel, or right now I'm taking this medication. We're really just trying to, understand how this medication is working for me. Like, sometimes you might experience me being a little bit irritable, but I want you to know that it has nothing to do with you. And if I've said something that really hurt you or bothered you, I'm really sorry. Can we talk about it? If it's a partner can really be like, listen, right now I'm experiencing, your mood changes. Tell me how I can support you. Tell me how I can be there for you. But how, if it has hurt my feelings, or if there's something that's happened that's really triggered something in me, then that's an opportunity for you to talk about it, but not from the standpoint of, I'm blaming you because you are mean, or you are short, or you are, because a symptom is not your entire personality. And so might me have more nuanced conversations around, this is really what I need from you, and I need you to be there with me and support me while I'm navigating this journey. And I want you to know it's not going to be perfect, and I'm not going to be perfect, and I want us to still be able to work together. You can have a safe word, like your safe word, is handcuffs. If I say handcuffs, then you know that the safe word is lemon, whatever that safe word is for you, just to be a point where you can kind of laugh it off and be like, oh,
we're there now.
Oh, we're there now?
Right.
Okay, I got you. All right. So I think that that's a lighthearted way for you to say it, but still approach the situation, but also don't shy away from the work of actually having a meaningful conversation about what both of you need and how both of you can support each other while you're navigating your hormonal journey.
Thank you for all of that. So you've really sort of laid out a carpet for us of sort of strategies, things to consider, considering each other's sort of humanity, space that we take up, and so on. Sex, pivoting to that part of the conversation now. Couples so often find that suddenly having dialogue about sex is uncomfortable. In many times I've heard from women because they've just never really talked about it. Like, maybe they've enjoyed it, maybe they haven't enjoyed it so much, but they've been on this journey together, and now there are challenges in the way. Maybe it's libido, desire. You said you wanted to talk about. I'd love to talk more about that. Maybe it's pain, vaginal dryness, and all the things that come or may come in perimenopause and menopause. Just to sort of start us out, is there a way to listen and speak that is non-judgmental about the topic of sex in perimenopause and menopause, a topic that may have become sensitive between a couple?
So as far as like scaffolding is concerned, yes, I do believe it. But I also believe that if you create one, safety in conversation, safety, and you hold safe space for each other, that the purpose of safe space is not necessarily always going to be comfortable.
Mm.
I think that if you haven't talked about sex, because most of us grew up in families where you might not have had a sex positive family, or talking about self-pleasure or sexuality, or when you talked about, or if anybody taught you about sexuality, you heard anything about sexuality, it could have been through the lens of don't get pregnant, good girls don't do this, you don't do that, religious shame, which is a huge aspect of it, or through the lens of abstinence or STI. If you have sex, you either abstain, or sexuality as a means of protecting yourself against sexually transmitted
Right.
infection, right? So there's that part. If you don't have language around sexuality, it's going to be like anything else in your life that you don't give attention or oxygen towards. I also think that sexuality is very charged. We come with our own opinions, belief systems, vulnerabilities. Like it's sensitive tissue when
In
we
and
talk
of
about
itself.
our sexuality, and we also have preferences. It can come with a lot of shame and a lot of guilt and a lot of judgment, particularly if we've had previous partners who've made us feel that way, particularly if we're coming to intimacy and sexuality, or the experience, having experienced our own sexual trauma or our own trauma that impacts the way we experience pleasure, or even just the way we are in sexuality. So the point is that can couples do it? Yes. Does it mean that it has to be the most comfortable conversation? No, you're going to have to try it on for size. And just like riding a bike, you're going to have some times where you're like, oh, I didn't necessarily mean to say that, or I didn't mean to hurt your feelings, or I didn't mean to take it that way. You're going to have to work through it. And I think sometimes people feel like scared to work through it because they don't want to offend their partner. But I think that what it's costing you is your relationship with intimacy, your relationship with pleasure, and the depth of connection that you could be having with your partner by not talking about these things. I think the second thing is that we approach intimacy and sexuality very unconsciously. We have a lot of unconscious rules, belief systems, ways in which we experience sex and intimacy, ways in which we think about our own body, about what our body is capable of or not capable of. One of the things I hear a lot from my clients, particularly during perimenopause, menopause, is like, if you've had children, maybe you don't feel like your body is the same, or maybe if you're going through perimenopause, you're not feeling like the desire is hitting the way that it used to. You're not feeling, or maybe your partner is commenting on performance, or how many orgasms you're having, or you're not having sex. So you're bringing up that insecurity. And so we have our unconscious belief systems, and then we also have insecurities on top of that about maybe our size or our weight or our ability. And all of that makes sexuality feel a little scary. But I'm here to tell you that you can do it, and that it is possible. And then I want you to lean into it, because you will be able to learn so much about yourself and also about your partner. So if you open up these conversations and you talk about your relationship, for example, with pleasure, and what you learned about pleasure, what's your own experience, like what are some of the messages that I got about sexuality, and really being able to talk to your partner and have that conversation, you will be surprised at how the word that came up is emancipating, like how, like, wow, I had no idea. Like I had no idea that you felt that way.
That's so interesting and so helpful, I think, to consider talking about these things almost, I'm envisioning, as friends, right? Outside of the bedroom altogether. This is about you and this is about me, and share what happened with you, what your learnings are, what your ideas are, what you've been taught, what you've understood. So, and then we can kind of come back around. You brought up two things that I just want to kind of hover on for a little bit. One is about body changes, which is a really big thing for women in midlife. And the other I'm thinking about is sort of the tension that might come up when sexual intimacy is not in sync. Can you talk about, I guess, or maybe offer some tips for how to unpack those two pieces?
Yes. So let's talk about body image, the way in which we look at our bodies and how that can be affecting intimacy. In order to understand who you are, what you need, how you have changed, and what your needs are now, we can't ask our partners to do stuff and go to a space that we do not know intimately ourselves. And so it is important for us to do our own self-work around that sexual aspect of who we are. What is in, if you were in my office, there are a couple of things that I'd be doing with you. One is a sexual history. So I'd want to know, what are your belief systems and values around sex in order to be able to step into intimacy and even a relationship with your body, to be able to feel pleasure, to want pleasure, to accept pleasure in your body. What's taking you away from that? So I want to talk about history. I also do body mapping. So in your own body, have like a drawn out figure of the body. And we want to look at different zones in your body. Where do I bring in pleasure in my entire body from head to toe? And where do I feel shame in my body? Because part of the work is somatic. I think as women, as humans, but particularly if you're a woman, like a lot of life is up here. We're very analytical. We think through everything. And sometimes we think about our feelings as opposed to feeling our feelings.
Yeah.
And so this is especially true when it comes to intimacy and the way in which we look at our bodies. And so from head to toe, where do I experience pleasure and where do I experience guilt and shame? And you might understand that some of those things are overlapping. And so when we want to heal from trauma, or when we want to step into sexuality, intimacy, we don't know what some of those blocks are. Yes, we know that hormones come to play. Yes, for some, you are dealing with pain during sex, which makes it very uncomfortable and also create a cycle of avoidance, because if sex feels uncomfortable for me, then I'm probably going to avoid having sex because I know what it's going to feel like when I have sex. And then I'm not going to relax and I'm going to tense up and I'm going to feel anxiety or anticipatory anxiety when I think about sex. So if a partner is trying to approach me and want sex, or even if I desire to have sex, I'm going to stop myself sometimes, or I'm going to do it and I'm not going to feel, I'm going to disconnect from pleasure because I'm experiencing pain. And so again, when I say that this is very multi-layered,
Yeah.
it is. But to just simply break it out, one, we also have to identify in our bodies where we hold shame and what the stories are that we are holding on to. Whether it's, being touched a certain way will trigger a memory for you, or being touched in a certain place that will trigger a fight or flight response. I want you to identify what that looks like for you. I think, secondly, seek out support and care. Many times when we feel self-conscious about our bodies and its functioning, we may avoid, delay, and put off because we think that it means something about ourselves. But just like any aspect of our life, if we troubleshoot things, we can say, you know what? I deserve to feel pleasure. I deserve to feel good. I do not have to suffer while I'm going through this important transition in my life. How do I allow this to be an opportunity where I can reimagine what pleasure, intimacy, and even just leveling up myself, like I deserve to feel good. And so if that looks like, let me have a conversation with my OBGYN and talk about the issues that I'm experiencing. If I'm experiencing pain during sex, maybe I need pelvic floor therapy so that I can, if some people experience pelvic floor prolapse, some people experience pelvic pain. And so how am I also bringing a treatment team around me so that I can start solving some of these problems, or at least working my way through really getting to the intimacy that I desire, and also bringing my partner along in that process. So if I do have a partner who is wondering like, oh, I wonder what, I feel afraid to ask you for intimacy because I don't want to hurt you, depending on if you're in a same-sex relationship. Some people might like to strap when they are being intimate, and some people don't like being intimate with, penises or toys at all. And it's still causing them a little bit of discomfort. This would be a time for you to lean in and have those conversations with your partner about, okay, well, what would pleasure look like for me right now? What does my body need right now? I think my body needs soothing and comfort. So let me not push away all bids for affection and intimacy. Maybe right now I feel more comfortable with vaginal stimulation, with clitoral stimulation. Maybe I feel more comfortable being massaged and soothed and nipple stimulation. Maybe there are other ways in which I can explore sensation or play that has nothing to do with intercourse right now while I'm healing, while I am doing this work. So that's just kind of an overview of how I
That's
would.
incredibly helpful. And I'm thinking about sort of the value for people in working with you and a menopause specialist, quite frankly, because, I'm thinking about the person who maybe is exploring and unpacking all of these different aspects of sexuality, of intimacy, and could use some vaginal estrogen, could use some menopause hormonal therapy. Not that it's a panacea, but it can certainly kind of get you over a hurdle that you sort of may not be considering, but in tandem, sort of the mind-body connection and exploring how to get out of your mind and more into your body and have your body feel good as you're doing so is critical. Marissa, how can couples maintain intimacy? I think you're letting us know this, but I'm giving you sort of space to tell us over and over again. But how can couples maintain intimacy when one partner is experiencing the physical and or emotional changes associated with this transition?
Sure. The biggest thing that comes to mind right now is that I think that we move further and further away of focusing on pleasure. And pleasure, I think, is the birthplace. It is the allowing ourselves the permission to experience joy, the experience the permission to experience connection, the permission to experience closeness, sexually or outside of the bedroom. I think that many times when we see a problem, we just laser focus to it. We're not having the intercourse, we're not having the desire, we're not having all these things. And so we're building up this negative expectation around intimacy, where I really want us to be thinking about, how do we increase pathways to pleasure? How do I increase pathways to pleasure in the body, sexually, emotionally, spiritually, physically? Do we run together? Do we have activities and things that we do that nourish us as a couple and enhance us having pleasurable experiences together? How do I experience pleasure in my own body? And might I add, I would like for you to know that we're only going to experience as much pleasure as we believe that we deserve. And if you don't believe that you deserve pleasure, if you don't believe that you are worthy and good enough and that something is wrong with you, then you will always limit how much pleasure and connection and joy that you will allow into your life, period.
That's
And
huge.
so how do we increase our tolerance, our threshold, and the way in which we look at intimacy outside of just penetration and intercourse, if that's your pleasure? Because sexuality is so much bigger than that. It's so much greater than that. There's lots of people that I work with that have lots of sex that have nothing to do with penetration. And so how might we be able to expand what is sexuality, intimacy, and eroticism, and how might we be able to bring our partner into that experience? Because this time of life that we're in, perimenopause and menopause is going to require something different, friends. Like, you can't do it the way that we did it in the 20s. It's just not the same. And
So
so
tell us a little bit more about that. What are you thinking about when you share that?
well, it's not the same because sometimes I think that what we're not doing is grieving the way in which we did sex then,
Mm.
the ways in which we felt pleasure then. That a lot of things we could have evolved that we bring with us, but our orgasms might have changed. The way in which we bring in pleasure in our bodies might be different. And so if it is different, how might we update it's like having a software update. If you have an iPhone 10 sexually, you still have an iPhone 10. Like we
Right.
on 16 now. We're going to have to upgrade.
Yeah.
We're going to have to think about it differently. What do I desire? What do I need? What is erotic to me? So that your sexuality is not just, in my TEDx, I always say it ends up being an individual sport. Because if you're not talking about it and you're afraid to talk about it, and you don't want to talk to your partner about it, and now it's uncomfortable talking to your partner about it. Now, what are you going to do? When you feel desire, you're going to keep it to yourself, which is not a bad thing. I want everybody to be able to experience the pleasure that they deserve. But when you're in a relationship and you want to experience that with your partner and you don't know how, instead of making it an individual sport, how do we upgrade the way in which we think about pleasure and the way in which we invite our partner into our experience? And that is the work that you will have to do.
Amazing. Thank you for that. Something you just said made me think about the fact that this is Perimenopause Awareness Month. This is Sexual Health Awareness Month. And we're speaking a lot to younger individuals who are wondering if they have entered into perimenopause or thinking about the fact that it's coming. Any tips for those people in particular and sort of being proactive or preemptive about the possibility that their sex lives might change for any number of reasons?
I think that what we have to hold space for is our own evolution physically, emotionally, and in all aspects of our life. Who we were a year ago is not who we are now. It is not going to be who we are a year from now. We hope to evolve. And with that evolution, how are we maintaining ourself? How are we giving back to ourselves? How are we not allowing the calendar one day that goes after the next, the next, the next, the next, the next? And how are we taking the time to give back to ourselves? Pleasure, rest, all of these things are active resistance. Now, if we are thinking about whether I'm in perimenopause or menopause, I encourage us to start having more conversations with our girlfriends, our friends, and our family about what their experience was and what they went through. I am so tired as a woman of color, and I will still always continue to be passionate about this work, that these conversations are little whispers. Oh my God, I'm these hot flashes, girl. Like, I don't want, we need to, as women, be more open about what we are experiencing so that we don't feel like we're alone in our experience, because we are not. We all go through it. We've all either been there, going through it, in the midst of it, or beginning it. I didn't know that when I was having fatigue and when I was experiencing, like brain fatigue and all, like brain fog and all of that stuff. I had no idea. It was the conversations that I had with my girlfriends about, girl, do you know I'm doing pellet therapy? Do you know I started doing this product? I started taking this cream. And that's how we start to close the gap so that we're not having these conversations 10 years from now. So that's 10 years of struggling. No,
Right.
you
Right.
did not come here to struggle, my friend. You did not come here to not feel and step into the best era of your life. And if you need to do that, please go on Alloy, use your $20 and
Thank you for that.
try something, because it's better than letting 5 years go by. It's costing you. It's costing you
Certainly.
time of being present. It's costing you the pleasure that you deserve, and it's costing you the connection that you deserve to have.
That's wonderful. Thank you. I want to read out loud to you what somebody put in the Q&A. She's so true. Our sex in this chapter of life has evolved since our 20s. Even my husband said it the other day, our sex is so much better and more comfortable on many levels because of how mature we are in our relationship. She's absolutely amplifying the connection there. It leads me to ask you, however, because I have heard from many, many women who have said, ultimately, I think what you're speaking about, which is an inability to sort of share how one is doing with their partner, but what they are sharing and have with me is my partner expresses a feeling of disconnection or unsatisfaction. So speaking to partners of women in perimenopause and menopause right now, if they are feeling disconnected or unsure of how to help their loved one, what can you offer?
You are not responsible for somebody else's pleasure, somebody else's sexuality, somebody else's orgasms. We don't hold that responsibility. We co-create a space together, but many times because of the conditioning that we've gotten, because of the messaging that we've gotten, we believe that somehow, and our partners add to that, that we are responsible for all of their sexual pleasure. And when it's not happening, then we are wholly responsible for that. That is not true. Your partner has work to do lovingly. And it's because they feel disconnected from you because maybe they don't know everything about what's happening in this phase of life. Or maybe their own stuff is coming to the surface, which it is. But again, it's a cause and effect where both of you have a part to play in this. If your partner feels disconnected from you, then I want to understand, if you were in my office, okay, this is what you're experiencing right now. You're trying to work through your emotions, your desire, your all of these things. Have you brought your partner into the experience? When you've talked about these things, how have you talked about them? Have you really invited your partner in a meaningful way? Or based on your belief systems, your upbringing, do you prefer to avoid? Do you prefer just not to talk about it? Do you prefer to just sweep it under the rug and act like it's not an issue, or don't touch that part of your relationship? Like, we don't talk about sex. Like, we just do it occasionally. We don't talk about it. And so if that's the case, what is your partner experiencing? And we could look at that objectively. We can objectively look at our partner and say, okay, if they are experiencing my avoidance around this, if they're experiencing my discomfort around this, I wonder what they think it means about them. Because as humans, we tend to take things personally. It's just what we do. And so how might I be able, if you're a partner watching this, and you really want to have a better understanding of your spouse, number one, please don't take things personally. Number two, they are not responsible for your sexual pleasure. And so how might I understand how my intimacy has changed over the course of these years, and how do I adopt what I call sexual resilience? I did a whole TEDx on how couples overcome sexual rejection with sexual resilience, which is that sexuality through as we age and through the life cycle is not going to be perfect. It is the commitment that we are going to continue to rediscover and understand what we need, what our partners need, what our bodies need. And it is an iterative process that we are going to try some things. We're going to talk about it. We're going to say, oh, that doesn't work. We're going to try something new. If you are a business owner, you understand. I know a lot of you out there work. And so if you have an issue that comes in your office, you're going to be like, all right, how do we get to this destination? Let me be a project manager and figure out what the steps are to take to get to that point. If something comes and you're like, this is not working, let's figure it out. Let's get feedback. Let's communicate about it. Let's understand what the issues are so that we can better bring in resources. That could be a couples therapist, that can be a sex therapist, that could be a pelvic floor therapist, that can be individual therapy.
So helpful.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Marissa, someone asks, how do I explain how I feel medically to my partner in a way he understands? He tries, but doesn't have a point of reference for this. I think this is such a great question too, because some people do need another sort of piece of the puzzle in order to get to a place of understanding. So what do you say to this person?
possibly couples therapy might be a really great place for you right now, because I think that it's not that you are conveying it, but there is something that your experience is touching, some wound that it's touching within your partner, that you feel like, if I get more information and I really understand it, then I'm going to feel better about it. No, it feels like your situation might be triggering a deeper need that your partner has that they cannot express to you. And the grief of it. I think let's talk about the role of grief in this process, that if they are grieving the sexuality and the way in which you've done sex, or the way in which they've had access to your body, or the type of intimacy that you've had before, that is a process of them maybe wanting to be intimate with you and the way in which they want to be intimate with you. And the absence of that is really where they're struggling. That is grief. That is the loss of not being able to have the intimacy that they desire with you. And that is their work. And that's also a work that you do together as a couple. I think that it would be really helpful if you feel like this is a fork in the road, that you can talk to and find a sex therapist or a couples therapist in your area. I belong to AASECT, which is American Association of Sexuality Educators, Counselors, and Therapists. And we have a Find a Therapist, where you'll be able to go to the website and you can find somebody who is a sex therapist, and you can look at their credentials, who by zip code, who's in your area. I do not want you to be afraid of reaching out to a sex therapist, because couples therapy is great. Couples therapy is going to get you a far way, but couples therapists, and I'm saying this as a couples therapist, they're going to hit a roadblock when it comes to intimacy, because all couples therapists are not trained to deal with intimacy, and certainly not trained when it comes to reproductive care and women's health. And so for you to be able to find the resources that you need, so that both of you can have a voice in the room, so that yes, you can hear also your partner's perspective. They are grieving. They want to be close to you, and maybe they don't know how to, and that's okay. And how do you also hold space for what they're experiencing? And now maybe possibly together you can have a healing conversation and co-create a new way forward. But first, in order for that to happen, sometimes we have to attend to the wounds and acknowledge what's there before both people can feel comfortable to be able to say, okay, I hear you, you understand me, I feel seen, now we can move forward.
Awesome. Thank you so much. This is unbelievable. Marissa, we sort of take for granted that every woman entering perimenopause and menopause may be the individual in a relationship whose libido declines, but I feel like airtime isn't given enough to others
Right.
who in fact have an increased libido, and what that might do in a relationship. I don't know. Could you talk about that for a bit?
Yes. Thank you for bringing this up. Whether you have wherever your partner may fall on the gender spectrum, if you identify as a woman, that many times we get even more hurt when sexuality or intimacy or libido wanes. I have clients across gender spectrum in my practice, and the knife does not cut just one way, where it's just like, you're in a heterosexual relationship, the male partner is the one who's asking for sex. More often than not, in my practice, we're working through what it means for the female partner to want more intimacy, and the partner having, if they're in a heterosexual relationship, they might have erectile dysfunction. If they're in a same-sex relationship, it just might be libido and overall sexual issues, everywhere from from vaginismus to other chronic, challenges. And so what it brings up for us is our sense of worthiness, our sense of being wanted, being cherished. And so if you can hold that in regard, and recognize that when we feel as though our partner does not want to engage in intimacy, sometimes that deep wound for us is that we feel unwanted, we feel rejected, we feel undesirable. That is one of the biggest things that comes up. Does my partner not like my weight?
Right.
Did my partner lose interest in me? Am I not attractive enough? Am I not good enough? And then we sandwich that with, if your partner watches, erotic material, well, then we feel sometimes some partners might feel uncomfortable with that. If we feel as though our partners are not engaging in intimacy, many times we make it feel like it is so personal and it's about us. I hear you, and I think I want to take the time to acknowledge that it hurts. It hurts when we feel like we're not seen. It hurts when we feel like we are not we want to be close to our partners and it is not being reciprocated. And so I just want to give like an opportunity for you to know that like I see you and you are not alone in that. However, in order for us to get through that, we're going to have to sit in some uncomfortable work,
Mm-hmm.
get to the other side of it, which is if I didn't feel as self-conscious, if I didn't feel as unworthy, how else could we have a conversation about the lack of intimacy in our relationship? Because when we feel unworthy, then what happens? Our defenses come up. We're going to shame, we're going to blame, we're going to avoid, we're going to fight or flight, and we're going to do all of that stuff to protect ourselves because at the end of the day, we feel hurt. And so if we were to put down, I always tell my clients, how you put down your weapons, it's time to put down your weapons, okay? Our shame, our blame, our criticism, how we put down our weapons. And if we did that, how do we say, I miss you.
Mm.
I miss you. There's no shame or blame in any of this, but I miss you. I miss being close to you. I miss feeling your body. Like I miss you. How do we get back to us? And then co-create solution. It ain't coming from a place of you did this wrong, I did this, you did this wrong, you didn't do this, da, 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 da. It's coming from a place of I miss you. I love
Wow.
you. I love us. How we get back to us.
It's an amazing amount of introspection, I think, and responsibility, which is a word that gets tossed out a lot. But I think the ability and the capacity to sort of self-examine, self-explore, and bring that maybe vulnerability, maybe for the first time in a relationship, you're putting down an amazing amount of guardrails, assumptions, behaviors, shame, all of that, and connecting so deeply with another, maybe after many years into a relationship with that person, because sex becomes the neon light in the room when actually it's maybe about 10 other things, but in any case, the ability to be introspective is everything, it sounds like.
Introspective, but connecting, because what you're
Right.
doing is I'm identifying what this means for me so that I can share that with you so that we can do this together. Some things are going to be my work. Some things are going to be your work. And then we're going to bring those solutions together and we're going to figure this out. That's what sexual resilience is. It's saying that as you leave this call today and go off into your beautiful lives, you don't have to be perfect. Your body doesn't have to be perfect. Your partner doesn't have to be perfect. And your sex does not have to be perfect in order for you to experience pleasure. So how do we be more pleasure seeking? How do we be more pleasure seeking in our communication, in our connection, in our intimacy, so that we can find the solutions and have the reservoir so that we can come up with the solutions that we need so that we can have the relationships and the intimacy we deserve.
Two final questions, Marissa, to that point, being more pleasure seeking. I'm imagining an individual or a couple in your office, the hour is wrapped up, and maybe are you leaving them with a small daily practice or a gesture to impart in between the time that they see you again?
Yes, there's a couple of things, but I think one of the biggest things as a takeaway, I want you to take a piece of paper you and your partner do this activity together. I always do it. To me, it is impossible for you to move forward until you identify for both of you what this means. It's called the letting go exercise. In order for you to move forward and create different possibilities for yourself, we're holding on to some things that are impacting our intimacy, our pleasure, and our sexual lives. And so if you are able to identify, you and your partner take 10 minutes to do this, you are identifying all the things that you want to let go, all the things that are impacting your intimacy, your pleasure. It could be everything from, the sexual trauma in and of itself that makes you dissociate during sex or makes you not know how to bring in sexuality into your body. It could be everything from criticism, shame, performance anxiety, religious shame, all of those things. I want you to write down and identify at least five real big things that are impacting your intimacy. And then your partner is going to do the same. And then I want you to, on the other side of that paper, to identify all the possibilities. If I were to let these things go that have now become part of my identity, because now I think I'm not good enough because I experienced this. I think that I'm not able or capable, or that I'm not worthy, or I'm broken because these things have happened to me. If I were to let these things go, what would I be open to? How would I be able to stretch? How can I show up differently in sexuality and with my partner? Maybe I can feel more present in my life. Maybe I can allow my partner to touch me without feeling uncomfortable. Maybe I can, whatever that is for you, you identify it, you write it on the other side of the paper. Then both of you have a conversation about it. I want you to share. I want you to be open, honest. We're holding space for each other, compassion, curiosity. And then when you're done with it, both of you go, you hug, all the things, you burn it or you get rid of it. We are getting rid of it. You're genuinely getting rid of it. You're taking that piece of paper, you can burn it, you can set it on an air balloon, you could put it in the ocean, you could do whatever you want, you just get rid of it. And you allow that to be the line in the sand where you get to start over. And you get to now both say, what do we want? If sex worked the way that we wanted it to work, what would that look like? And that's where you start.
I love that so much. That's incredible, Marissa. Thank you. Compassion, curiosity, pleasure,
Play, fun, joy,
fun.
all the things. It doesn't have to be so hard. Stop making it hard. Like I know that it's hard.
Yeah, tell us a little more about that before I close us out. That's such an important reminder.
Before you go, again, like some of us have been so ingrained in the struggle of life, in the struggle of in struggle. Yeah. This is a place where I want you to invite more ease into your life. How can I invite more ease when it comes to pleasure? How can I just allow myself pleasure, play, fun? We take those aspects out because we're like, oh, I have to do this. I have to be this. I have to have my body. I have to do I don't have this. I don't have that. If you're experiencing vaginal dryness, lots of lubrications out there, lots of lubes out there that can support you. If it's not working, then we'll find another one that actually works better. Like there are choices and solutions, and it can be fun. I want you to have fun again. Pleasure is fun, and you deserve to have fun. And if you are not having fun, then you can find pathways to be able to have more fun, more play, more joy, more imagination, because you deserve it and it is your birthright.
Marissa Nelson, where can people find you?
Yay! Well, you can find me on Instagram, XO Marissa. Yeah, XO Marissa Nelson on Instagram. And then you can email me, because if you want to continue skill building, especially around sexuality and intimacy, email me. I'm launching a course and a community on October 22nd. And this is going to be all around sexual wellness, relationships, and helping you navigate this journey so that you can have the best intimacy and the best closest and the best relationship ever. And you can do it, and you can get support with other women who are also going going through this journey with you. So email me if you're interested. And other than that, please take your $20 today and please go have fun.
Thank you.
Go have fun on the website and let this be your homework to try something new so that you can move forward.
I love that so much. Thank you for that. Yes, in a final push, please do take advantage of the coupon we're offering today. Get yourself some vaginal estrogen if you are not a user. That is a must, please. Marissa, I knew in listening to you, in speaking with you personally, in learning from you, that you are just a profoundly wonderful educator. You're inspiring, you're encouraging. I think I so wanted to have this conversation because, you know, the piece around the hormones is a given. The piece around sort of the mechanics might be a given. But as we are getting older, relationships can get more challenging. They can feel more challenging when maybe they need not be. And certainly our enjoyment, our pleasure of our bodies, sharing our bodies with another should be as wonderful as it can be. And so having this conversation with you, bringing in all that you did is just, I can't say enough about you and about how helpful this has been. So thank you so much for joining us here on the Alloy platform. I hope that we'll speak.
Happy to be here.
I'm so happy. Thank you so much to those of you who came. We were all sort of wrapped by your downloads, and I'm so grateful for it. I hope that everyone will rewatch because there were a lot of rich information here to take away. So thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. Be well, Marissa. We'll talk soon. Bye.